Welcome to Impact Innovators with Felicia Ford, where we dive into the strategies that empower changemaker brands to leave a lasting legacy. Think of this podcast as your audio playbook for meaningful action. What's possible when thought leaders, disruptors, and pioneers align to share their journeys? I'm Felicia Ford, your host, bringing together the brightest minds and the most groundbreaking ideas to help you drive change, navigate through the sticky stuff, and elevate your brand. Whether you're tackling funding hurdles, looking for growth strategies, or seeking the perfect balance between profit and purpose, we've got you covered. Stay tuned and be a part of a movement that's setting new benchmarks in how we think about progress, community, and doing. Let's innovate, impact, and inspire.
Welcome. This is a featured contribution for National Black Girl Month 2025, a national initiative co-founded by Felicia Ford of Felicia Ford & Co. and Dr. Rakesha Fry Brown of Dr. Rakesha Fry Brown, LLC. Each year, National Black Girl Month centers the experiences, identities, and voices of Black women and girls. Some years, we highlight a specific theme or segment within our communities. This year, we're focusing on Black motherhood, the traditions, expectations, and personal shifts that often go unnamed but are deeply felt. Whether by birth, by bond, or by role, Black mothers often hold more than we can measure. And yet it's rare to have space to reflect on how that holding shapes us. In this video, you'll hear from Dr. Phoebe Ajayi, a physician and maternal health advocate whose work explores what recovery looks like after childbirth, not only for the body, but for the identity of the mother. Her reflections are drawn from clinical experience, lived truth, and a desire to reimagine how care continues after birth. To explore more, visit nationalblackgirlmonth.com and download your 2025 National Black Girl Month Toolkit. You'll find journal prompts, reflection guides, and ways to stay connected throughout the month. Let's begin.
As a medical doctor, there are patients that stay with me for a very long time. One of such patients was an elderly lady that I had the privilege of treating when I was working in a rural primary health clinic in Nigeria. She had the worst case of uterovaginal prolapse that I had ever seen. Her uterus was completely outside her body, and she had to physically shove it up through her vagina and hold it in place with some rolled up cloths. Fast forward several years, and I was a doctor working in the UK. I got pregnant with my first. That was 2017 to 2018. I had really bad pelvic girdle pain, and I went on to develop pelvic floor dysfunction after I had my baby. That experience, of course, brought back this lady into my mind, as well as other women that I had seen over the years with different symptoms arising from pelvic floor dysfunction. Because I'm a doctor, I knew what the problem was and I knew what to do. But then I started thinking about these women. What do they know? What kind of care do they receive? As healthcare providers, how do we rehabilitate these women? And looking into this made me realize that there was a serious deficit in the care, services, and knowledge available to many women. And that was what inspired my work into postpartum rehabilitation. I think that motherhood is like a marathon. And just like every marathon, one should prepare as much as possible, physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually, mentally. There's so many ways one needs to prepare. I think that unfortunately, many of us go into the whole motherhood journey underprepared. I mean, there's really no way to be 100% prepared because there are so many physiological changes with sometimes irreversible consequences. However, one can prepare to the best of their ability. I think because we are underprepared and there are so many changes going on, many of us unfortunately burn out. I think that maintaining one's sense of self as a mother and not losing oneself in motherhood is actually twofold. The first is acceptance. Just accept that things are going to change. Your life as you knew it has changed. You're now responsible for a new person. I think there is a lot of angst that comes from resisting that change, struggling with that change. I definitely struggled with the change after I had my first, and I know that many women struggle with this also. So there's just accepting that change. Maybe the next 1 or 2 years are going to be very different from what you were used to, but it's not bad. It's different. It's not worse. It's just a new normal that one is going to have to get used to. But also, as those changes are going on, I think it's important to remain anchored in who you are. If you have some sort of spiritual practice that might help keep you grounded, I think it's very important to do something for yourself and not allow yourself become completely consumed by motherhood. So for me, it looked like putting boundaries around certain areas. So I made up my mind that when I met up my friends for coffee or work colleagues, I wouldn't bring up baby talk. I promised myself that I wasn't going to do that, because it's easy once you start talking about the baby and then you start showing this picture and that picture and that picture. And yes, your colleagues or your friends, they will ooh and ah over the babies. But I think generally speaking, people don't care so much about babies they are not related to. So I think most times they're being polite, or maybe I just have the wrong kind of friends. But I didn't want the baby to consume every aspect of my life, like my work life, my social life, my friendships and all that. So that was a boundary that I set in place for myself. My husband and I also set a similar boundary around our relationship. So we were not allowed to discuss baby talk, children, and all of that on date nights. So that was a boundary that we put in place to protect our relationship. So I think generally, even as one is navigating through the realms of motherhood, I think it's important to remember that your baby is their own individual. They will grow up, they will leave the nest one day, and then you'll be left with yourself. So it's important to keep nourishing yourself, maintain healthy self practices in the midst of it all. And yes, in the first few years, you might have less time to spend on self, but I think it's really important to keep nourishing oneself regardless of how much time there is. It might just be a 5-minute practice. It might be 2 minutes here and there, because guess what? You can't pour from an empty cup. I know you've heard this 1,000 times. It's a cliche because it's true. There are so many gaps in providing women with good pregnancy and postpartum care. I think on a global scale, we have this attitude generally of, oh, you've had the baby, you know what to do, now crack on with things, even when she's had a cesarean section. But I think we could do more to support new moms in this time. I think that every woman would benefit from optimal social and emotional support, because as we talked about earlier, it's been a long period of physiological changes, physiological stress, mental changes, and in the postpartum period, things are still changing. So I think every mom needs emotional, physical, social support. We need communities around us. Also, in my ideal world, every woman would have access to a birth debrief. I had one with my first. My first was a complicated, high-risk pregnancy and delivery, and I was in labor for several days. And it was just helpful for me to be able to sit with a healthcare professional who went through my medical records, walked me through the whole process, because I realized in retrospect that I was disorientated for a significant portion of the labor. So that was because of sleep deprivation, the medications, the pain, everything. So just walking through it all with a healthcare professional, just sort of, it was like filing things away in their appropriate folders. And that just helped me to process everything that I went through and to move forward. Also, in my ideal world, every woman would have access to a full in-depth examination by a pelvic floor therapist postpartum. And this is because there are a lot of pelvic floor changes during the pregnancy and during the labor itself. It doesn't even matter if you have a cesarean section or a vaginal delivery. Every woman would benefit from access to an in-depth pelvic floor examination and rehabilitation program. And I think this will help prevent long-term complications like incontinence, prolapse, back pain, etc. Contrasting the UK and Nigeria, I think there are things that we get right on either side. So in Nigeria, we have this practice called omugwo, and it's basically a female relative, usually the new mom's mother. And if her mother is indisposed, it might be her mother-in-law, an auntie, whatever. So it's usually a female relative, sometimes more than one. And they go to her house to look after her when she's just had the baby. So they take care of all the household chores. They run the household, the washing, the cleaning, the cooking, the shopping. They do everything. And basically all the new mom has to do is rest and breastfeed. Rest and breastfeed. And not only that, but they will make some traditional recipes that are supposed to help her on her rehabilitation journey. They will give her massages and the like. So I wish we had that on a global scale. In the UK, it's more of an individualistic society, so I don't really get to see much of that. And also, because of the high cost of living, there are many women having their children and their own moms are still in full-time employment. So it's not always easy for them to be able to do this. But one thing we do get right is we have good midwife support in most parts of the UK. After the baby is born, the midwife comes to visit on several days in the first 2 weeks. And thereafter, another specialized nurse called a health visitor supports the new mom and the baby. We also have a 6 to 8 week postnatal check, which is when the baby and the mom are assessed and examined. The baby usually has their first set of immunizations around this time. Now, for the mom, the healthcare professional, usually a GP, will ask questions around the mental health, pelvic floor symptoms, and all of that. So that's great that we have that in the UK. I do wish we had longer appointments for this, and I do wish every woman got to have a pelvic floor examination by a pelvic floor therapist. Though there is something called the Mommy MOT, which is a program where you do have to pay for this to get an in-depth assessment by a pelvic floor therapist. And obviously, because it's paid and because they are not practitioners everywhere, it's not readily accessible or affordable to all. My book is called After Birth, Postpartum Rehabilitation of the Body and Mind, and it tells you everything you need to know about postpartum recovery. I talk about it in, not like a doctor telling you what to do, but like a friend. I say sometimes as a joke, I say it in my "hey girl" voice, not "I'm a doctor, listen to me," but whatever. Anyway, saying that, I would say there's a Nigerian proverb that says, whenever you wake up is your morning. So I know that sometimes people say, I wish I had known this earlier. I wish I had known that. I wish you can't really go back in time. The best time to start was maybe 5 years ago. The next best time to start is now. So I know women who started their postpartum rehabilitation 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years postpartum. Whatever the time, it's not too late. Now is your morning, so start.
Thank you for engaging with this featured contribution for National Black Girl Month 2025. To learn more about Dr. Phoebe Ajayi and her work, visit phoebeajayi.com or find her book, After Birth, Postpartum Recovery of the Body and Mind, wherever books are sold. That's PHOEBEAJAYI.com. If this reflection resonated with you, explore more resources and conversations at nationalblackgirlmonth.com, and don't forget to download your 2025 toolkit. You can also listen to the featured episodes for National Black Girl Month on Impact Innovators with Felicia Ford podcast, wherever you listen to your shows. We'll see you there.
Hey Changemaker, real quick before you go, if today's episode helped you in some way, the best way to thank me is to head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the channel, and leave a review. I'd also love to connect with you over on social. You can find me at Friends Call Me Fee. Until next time, keep changing the game.